Hey guys, welcome back to my sewing room. I'm Kelly and you found me here on Pick and Stitches, and today we're going to be working on the November box from Open Gate Quilt. I can't wait to sew this one out with you. Okay guys, I got a little bit of a late start on this box this month. It's been a little bit crazy around here. We've been really busy, but it is the day after Thanksgiving and I am in the mood to do some Christmas projects. So I sat down, I cut this out yesterday, and I have sewed it all out this morning. It has been a really fast and easy project. There were two variations in this box. So I chose to go, let's see how they worded it. The challenging feathered star variation is what I chose to do. I maybe it's more challenging than the other one. I think that if you just go slowly, anyone can do this quilt. It was really fun. As you can see, it's come together nicely and I am super excited to show you all the things. So first off, I did starch my fabrics. I have been on the calls before with Monique. They do the once a month calls so that you can do a live Zoom, ask any questions that you might have. And she has said that you shouldn't always assume that you can starch your fabric. So please be careful if you're starching, but I starched mine because that's just how I like to roll. And these were the leftovers that I had after everything was cut out and everything was done. So I feel like it was a really generous amount, but I don't have so many scraps that I'm going to lose my mind over it. I think if you made a mistake, you could probably inch your way back out of it. But yeah, overall, guys, I'm really excited about this. So let's jump right in and I'll show you what I did. Okay, guys, so the first thing that we're going to do, and keep in mind that a lot of these squares are kind of similar in size, so make sure you're grabbing the right squares, but we're going to start with these 12 and we're going to make some half square triangles. So what we need to do first is just flip over this lighter fabric and you can draw a line right down the middle and then sew a 1/4 of an inch away. I like to use this quilter's rule to make sure that I've got it exactly where I want the line to be, because I find it is just easier to sew on a line than it is to sew next to a line. So we're going to go through and we're going to mark all 12 of ours. I've already marked several of them. Then we're going to place our fabrics right sides together and then take them over to the machine and we're going to sew down each line. So let's head over to the machine and do that. Okay, so I have just my regular 1/4 inch foot. This one doesn't have a guide, so I want to make sure that it's going to be easy to sew and have fabric off of this side. So normally I've been using this guided foot a lot and I like it, but it's not a good piece or good choice for this type of sewing. So I'm going to line up my line with my seam guide tape. And I'm going to go ahead and just chain piece these so that it's quick. Right sides together. And I'll go through and sew all 12, come back, cut them apart, and then sew the other side. Okay, we'll just spin them around and sew the other side down. Okay, so now we're just going to take all of our half square triangles and we're going to cut down the middle line here. This does not have to be perfect because you've already sewn your seam. So this is just our seam allowance. We want to be in the same ballpark. I know a lot of people cut these with scissors, but I find it's just easier for me to stand up and use the rotary cutter. You can line up more than one at a time like this. Just make sure you have enough seam allowance left. Now I'm just going to pull over my ironing board. I love this ironing board because it actually fits right on top of this cutting mat. So if you're taking it to freeze classes, it is easy to stack and carry. All right, so we're going to press all of these towards the green. So I'm just going to go ahead and get them all lined up so I can set all my seams together. And then the green is going to be on top so that I'm automatically pressing it that way. I did starch all of my fabrics. I know sometimes Monique says that there may not be enough fabric, but I just decided to go with it because I really prefer to starch my things. So I do have steam in this iron right now, but I feel like everything has already pre-shrunk and I'm not concerned about the size changing at this point. Okay, so now we're just going to go through and trim off all of our dog ears here. And then when we start to trim down our half square triangles, we're going to have two different sizes. So make sure that we're going to separate out 8 to be trimmed to one size and the rest will be trimmed to another size. So make sure you're following that in the instructions and that you're kind of keeping those separate. Okay, so we're going to separate the first 8, 2, 3, 4. I can't count. So we're going to keep 8 at their original size. So I'm just going to double check and verify. Okay, so these are going to be my 8 that I don't trim. I always find with these half square triangles, maybe it's because I rush, I have one side that can be a little bit bigger if I'm not using triangles on a roll. So I always like to just measure it and double check. So we should have 16 remaining, and we're going to give those a quick trim. I'm not using the rotating mat actually, so I'm gonna go down to my glue mat. I really like to kind of use the same mat over and over again so that if I have to replace a mat, it's one mat and I haven't spread that out. The rotating mat is great when I'm cutting off on all fours, but I'm just doing 2 sides because I have a pretty good corner. Okay, so now we're going to use the ones that we trimmed and we're going to grab one of our just plain squares and we're going to start to line these up, and we want to make sure that we get the right direction. So we want to have the green on the bottom in the bottom right hand corner times 2. So I'm going to make 4 of these, and this is where I really like a design board because you can go ahead and lay it all out and then move over to your sewing machine and you won't disrupt it. So we're going to sew a seam here, 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 and here, and then I'll press them all at the same time, and then I'll come back and cut them apart. Then our other piece is going to have, did I grab the wrong squares? Some of these squares are very similar, guys, so make sure that you don't grab the wrong stack of squares. Okay, so we're going to have 4 rows of this side, and our green is going to be down at the bottom on all the sides. So we want to make sure your triangles are all the right direction. So what I'm going to do is go over to the machine, send these through, break my thread, and set it aside. And then I'm going to come through here and I'm going to sew these seams, break my thread, pull it back through, and then I'm going to attach these while they're all still kind of chain pieced together. So that's going to help me keep them all in order. So let's head over to the machine. Okay. So I am going to go ahead and switch my foot back to this one that's guided now that I'm not working on the diagonal. And I am just sewing with my 60 weight glide thread that I've been liking so much that I get over at Juki Junkies. I just love how long my bobbin lasts, how little lint is in my accessories when I go to clean them. So I'm going to start with this. Sorry, it's kind of a close up. I'm going to start with this left hand and I'm going to just sew those 4 seams. So I'll pick it straight up off of my design board, flip them together, and stitch it down. And you can pin these if that works better for you. Please feel free. This is just how I like to sew. There's definitely more than one right answer. So same thing, green still on that bottom right. Okay, so that section is done. I'm going to lay that over at our pressing station. And now I'm going to come back to this 3-piece and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to attach those two all the way down, and then we'll come in and add this last row. Okay, so I've sent the 4 through and I'm just going to break my thread, pull it back through, and then I'm going to flip it open. And I know I'm sewing it right here. So I still have my 2 greens. They're on the bottom left this time. I jumped over as I was starting to stitch, so I didn't quite get a 1/4 inch. Okay, so now I've got my 3 pieces all attached together. We're going to go press these and get ready for the next step. Okay, those are all pressed out and I cut them apart. Now we are going to just build this block out. So we're going to do this for all 4 different layers. Again, measure the square, make sure you're grabbing the right one because there are a couple. And what we're going to do is attach these to my big square, and then we'll press that, and then we're going to attach these to the top. All right, so I'm just going to grab these 2 stacks. We're going to run them through chain piece style. And again, if you like to pin, please feel free. See, and I bumped that, so I'm going to look back. I'm going to put it over here back on my design board and make sure that they're going the right direction. Okay, so I'm going to set my seams. And I have these up because I like to kind of hit the one with the most layers on the iron side if they're not even. So now we have these pressed and ready to go. We're just going to attach the top. We are going to have one seam we want to align here. They should nest, but if you'd like to pin, please feel free. So because I'm going to be running them through this way, I'm going to rotate my board. I hope that's not confusing on camera. And then I'm just going to nest these seams. That way when we sew it and we open them up, those seams really align. And that way when you take it over to press it, that makes a really nice corner there. Okay, so we'll set our seams. And then I'll leave these under the clapper while we work on the next piece. Okay, so now we're going to take the other half square triangles that we had set aside, and we're basically going to do the same thing. So I'm going to have my 2 greens in the bottom left. We're going to make 2. The difference here is that we're only going to attach a half square triangle in the middle instead of a full. Now we're going to make 4 of each. Okay, because I was looking at the drawing wrong. So for this first set, we're only going to need 4 triangles. And then we're going to take some of these that we cut on the diagonal, and we're just going to sew it to that. My old eyes didn't see that that wasn't actually a half square triangle piece. See, sometimes you just have to read the instructions. What? Read instructions? And kids would laugh at me. I say that often about our math tests, and that's not what they like to do. Okay. So now I'm going to use that same half square. This is just a triangle piece. It is not a half square triangle. And then I'm going to add this in the same pattern. And as you can see, the length of this is including that seam allowance. So when you line it up, you're going to want to line it up with the flat edges everywhere, okay? Not with this point that's going to dangle off the top. And I'll try to make sure and show that to you guys because it's not going to be the same length. You've got that 1/4 inch longer, and so you want to line up on the straight edge, not on the point tip. This other square should be the same size because we cut those slightly different, and it is. And we'll put those on the other side. So basically, we're going to go through and do the same exact thing. The only difference is when you're attaching these triangles, you're really going to want to make sure that you line up that straight edge and leave this point kind of dangling off the top on this row and off the top on this row. So here I've got that little triangle piece and I'm going to line it up here. Now, because I like to send through a square end and not necessarily this funky end, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to sew down. So lining up that bottom flat edge, and then I'm going to flip it over so that I have a nice square corner to work with. Okay, so we'll break the thread there so we can iron those separate. And then because these are square together, I'm going to do these 2 squares first. I usually like to work from the other side, but that'll be okay. Okay, so I'm going to pull this back through, open it up, and I know that this triangle is going to have to go on this side. So I'm going to place those together. And what I'm actually going to do, and I should have probably shown this from the beginning, is I'm just going to flip this over and work from the other side. But at the end of the day, you know you want both of your triangles to face the same way. So as I line this up, I'm going to line it up across this top edge where I've got the big flat section to work with. And I'm going to have a little bit of this tip dangling off the edge. That's okay. I don't want to touch it that way. I want to make sure my triangles are the same way. So I've got my 2 pieces. We'll set those seams. Okay, so now we will cut these apart. So we've got our triangle point down on the 2 piece section and our triangle points to the left on the 3 piece section. Is grab our 1 piece that we cut into 4 triangles. We're going to place it right here in the middle. Oops, not like that, like this. So first we're going to attach these 2 together and then we'll press it and then we'll come back and have this block and attach it to the top. You're going to have some odd shapes again, so you're going to want to line up this straight edge with your straight edge here. Actually, it works out just fine. And the reason it works out just fine is because we haven't trimmed this yet, because it's not built into a triangle. Okay, so we'll set our seams. Oops. stick to my iron, and then we'll press these open. Okay, now I'm gonna roll through and trim off these dog ears when I'm done with this block, because there's gonna be a couple here, here, and then on our next piece. So we'll just go ahead and stack these up. Get our design board back over here. So now we've got this block completed here, and we're gonna just attach this to the top. So you should have a seam that will nest between this triangle and this triangle. All right. So again, you should have a nice, easy nesting seam. I'm not going to want to start on these triangles, so I'm going to flip it over and work from this side. And you can absolutely sew from the other side. You have some patterns where you're going to have to, but if I can avoid it, I try to. It just feels like it gets more fiddly. So we'll set our seams, press these open, and then next is going to be our red pieces. And I really do love getting to sew with different people's patterns. I don't know if you guys do this, but I kind of get into a little bit of a rut. This is the way I always do it. These are the patterns I always pick. These are the fabrics I always pick. And so some of these kits are so fun just because Monique is going to write a pattern a little bit different than some of the other designers out there. And so I'm loving getting to know some of her styles as well. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is our red pieces. Okay, so now we've got our main body. We're going to just add our red squares. So we're going to have 4 squares that we add to each corner. So I'm just going to roll through and I'm going to add 1 to each one, and then we're going to press it, and then we're going to add the other one. Okay, as we're getting ready to put this together, I wanted to make sure that this was really something that you guys could see. So now that we're adding this triangle, it's not going to align with the top, and it's not going to align with this point. So you need to make sure that you have 1/4 of an inch hanging off of either side is what you're going to have. So we're going to get that lined up where we want it. Make sure we have it. You know, I'm going to just trim that because it's going to say the G. It's going to bug me. Okay, so we'll take these over and go press them, and then we'll add that last side. Okay, so we're going to set the seams. I'm going to take the minute to just kind of iron this whole block. I feel like probably didn't leave these under the clapper long enough. I do that sometimes when I'm filming, just to hustle things along. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and trim these corners off. Okay, so now we'll go attach this other red side. I'm actually going to flip my board over so that it makes sense in my brain. Okay, so now we'll set these seams and press them away. And then I will trim these dog ears off and meet you guys right back here. We are ready to start laying out our quilt top. Can you believe it? So the first thing we're going to do is we have our center holly. And I'm just going to use this ironing board. It's kind of heavy, but I can carry it back and forth and not lose my place. So we're going to set this all the way around with the red towards the middle. Red towards the middle, red towards the middle. Then we're going to grab our other pieces that don't have the red on them. They're going to also point towards the middle. So once we have all of those lined up, the first thing we're going to do is go ahead. I'm just going to get this center kind of 9 patch together. So I'm going to sew these two, then these two, then these two, and then I'm going to flip it open and I'm going to sew those on in order. So let's head over to the machine. Okay, so that's my top middle. This is my top left. And I'm going to sew these together. And I'm looking at this. I don't have any seams that are going to nest or be hopefully problematic at all. I'm just going to line it up and sew it together. So now I've got my middle and my middle left block. And now I've got the bottom middle and my bottom left block. Okay, now I'm just going to pull it back through. And I'm going to flip it open. So this is my middle top row. This is my far right hand. And I'm going to do the same thing. And I'll flip this middle and grab my other side. So that's the far right hand. I'll flip this one open. Then this is my bottom right hand. Okay, so we'll go press. So not to be confusing, this is the way I had it all lined up. And I sewed these two, and then I pulled it through and sewed these two, but it's going to fit better for me to iron if I rotate it. I'm going to do that just to get the pressing done. But I know sometimes if I change the vantage point, that's really confusing. Okay, so I'm going to rotate it back for sanity's sake, right? This was the way we had it. And these were what we just pressed and got together. Now I'm going to sew these seams and it's all still attached. You can see if I grab one piece, the whole thing moves. I'm still got my chains in here. So all I'm going to do is flip this over, nest my seams and sew it together. And then once I get through, I'll flip that back over and do the other side. Let's throw like 2 pins in it just to prove to the world that I can use pens. So we're going to get that seam nested. And whenever I do pin, I want to put one on each side of the seam. Probably don't have to, but if I'm going to go to the trouble, I'm going to do it right. And this center block, I want to align with all these different colors coming together nicely. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pin both sides just because this is a big enough block that it'll get out of the way. And I'm still using that nesting seam. In fact, this camera angle might show it a little bit better. So I've got one seam going one way and one the other, and I'm just pushing them right together. And I'm using my fingers like back and forth motion to really feel and make sure that those are as tight as I could possibly get them. Oh, I managed to unthread my needle. Yeah, somebody asked me the other day why I thread my machine by hand. Part of it, especially if I'm using this 60 glide thread, it's so super easy. Y'all saw that. I mean, my eyesight is not perfect and it usually takes me a while with the 50 weight cot. So with the glide, it is so easy. And then also there is a threading mechanism that's built into these, but I maybe am just too rough on it. I've had it replaced a time or two and I just finally just said, I don't care. It's okay. I'll thread my own needle. I love this machine. There are so many great attributes, and I can totally live with that one flaw. I'm sure they'll remedy it soon. Now, I do want to make sure that this point is not going to get cut off. So you're going to be looking at that point. I like to kind of mark it with my finger. And then before I move on, I always kind of pull it open, double check. And I would always rather have a little bit too much of the red showing than cut off that point completely. That's just me. You may feel differently, and that's totally fine. But I find that I wash my quilts a lot, and when they get good and crinkly, I want to make sure that I can still tell there's a point there. See, and this one's a little close. So I may even fudge this one a little bit and make that seam a little less than 1/4 inch. I'm out of bobbin thread. That sounds weird. All right, so I'll check this point and see, I needed every bit of that little fudge that I gave it to keep the red intact. So I do fudge sometimes. I admit it. I am a farmhouse quilter for sure, but I think this is really, really cute. I'm going to set and press these seams. Okay, so that is the center of this. Now the next thing that we're going to do is add our red borders. And we've got two different sets. So the first set you're going to add is going to be your shorter set. I'm just going to lay those out so I don't grab the wrong ones. Okay, so we'll set the longer set aside. We're going to go on opposite sides and just attach that and sew it on. Okay, so we're going to do these first two sides. We've made sure that that's our shortest piece, and I've just thrown a couple pins in it. Okay, so we'll go press this. Okay, so now we've got the other side pinned on. We're going to go through that on. Okay, so now we're going to pin on our shorter sides and we'll be good to go. Okay, so now we'll sew two sides on and press. Now I will say with this 18, excuse me, this 60 glide, I do tend to unthread my needle more often. Sometimes that's an indicator that you need to switch your needle, but I think just because it's so lightweight and I always start kind of going really fast, I unthread that needle a lot. If I will chain piece, it doesn't have any problems at all. So it's more about how I just try to rip through things. And if I don't cut the thread, if I actually like sent a bonus piece through or something, it would do that to me often. So I'm lining up with the edge of my fabric and the seam there, and I'm just going to trim that to size. And we'll do the same thing with the other. Okay, last two pieces.
All right, I'll go press it and get it on the design wall for us.
Okay, so I got it up on the design board and I think it looks fantastic. We have the binding that's going to go up last is going to be more of this dot pattern. And then the backing, if you chose to get that expansion, is more of our point pattern. So that's going to be really cute. I think this is a great one to quilt on your home machine because we didn't press these seams open and they're all nesting. You can absolutely stitch in the ditch on all of this project and it's going to be small enough to work. So I don't know. I may throw this up on the long arm. We'll have to see how that all works out. Okay, guys, that's a wrap on this month's quilt box. I hope you've enjoyed sewing it out with me. Thanks again to Open Gate Quilts for gifting that to me. I really do enjoy getting to share these with my viewers, and I'm getting so many comments that you guys love them too. I'll put a link in the description if you guys are interested in signing up for the box. If you do like any of these tutorials or my other unboxing videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button. It helps me out a ton. And until then, I will see you guys next time.